Did you know that nearly 1 in 5 employees reports their workplace as a major source of trauma? That's millions of people carrying around emotional wounds not caused by severe accidents or some other kind of tragedies, but by their job. I know I personally am one of those, and the impact goes far beyond the office. Have you ever felt your stomach drop when you felt an email or when you saw an email from your boss? Or laid awake on a Sunday night with full anxiety, maybe even panic attacks about Monday morning? Or just existential dread? I know a lot of people that work the 9 to 5 grind just don't like Monday mornings in general, but this goes a little further than just your standard disdain for waking up on Monday mornings and losing your weekend. This is a deep psychological, traumatic nervous system response. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But I just want you to know that you're not alone. Millions of people experience workplace trauma every day, and some of them don't even realize it. I know it took me quite a while before I realized that I was actually suffering from workplace PTSD. Yes, it's a true thing. Yeah, and it was very eye-opening. And so I wanted to share these revelations with you because maybe you're also someone who suffers from workplace trauma and may or may not be aware that that's even a thing until right now. So, welcome to the Do Life podcast, where we talk about life, its challenges, some clever ways to tackle some common obstacles with cutting-edge science, with cutting-edge technology, scientific-based research, and a splash of metaphysical properties. I'm your host, Life Coach Layla, and today we're going to be talking about something that doesn't get talked about nearly as often as it should, especially considering the fact that it affects millions of people, and that is workplace trauma. So whether that's a toxic boss, a microaggression, or constant microaggressions, burnout culture, outright harassment, or any other kind of workplace trauma, it leaves real scars. Scars on your mental health, scars on your nervous system, and even your physical body. But here's the good news. You're not powerless, you're not alone, and once you learn to recognize the patterns, you can heal. You can set healthy boundaries and thrive again. So first, let's start by defining workplace trauma. The definition is basically repeated negative experiences in a workplace that leaves emotional and psychological wounds. Some examples of things that can be traumatic in the workplace are bullying, gaslighting, unrealistic expectations, overworking, favoritism, lack of safety, sexual harassment, negligence. So many things. I could go on. According to the American Psychological Association, APA, the that nearly 1 in 5 employees reports their workplace as a major source of trauma. It's like 19%. It's crazy that it took me so long to figure out that that was a thing that even existed, and that so many of us still don't even know that it's a thing that exists. The World Health Organization, I try not to reference them a lot because they're a trigger word for a lot of people, but they've classified workplace burnout as an occupational phenomenon, not just being tired. So think about your own job, past, present. Can you remember a time when your body just tensed up walking into a building, or when your stomach drops after seeing your boss's name come across your screen in an email? That could be your nervous system signaling trauma. I went to one of my old jobs the other day. I was looking for a gift for a friend of mine, and I don't know what I was thinking. I was thinking I would run into some of my old employees that I really liked. I wanted to say hi. And when I walked in, I saw my old boss and one of those kiss-ass coworkers is basically like her little workplace bestie. Anyway, we're not going to get into the actual trauma. I know some of you guys want the tea, but I just don't want to relive that right now. But yeah, I walked in and saw them both standing there, and they looked up. We all made eye contact. I rolled my eyes and I walked out. It's been 5 years since I've worked there. I should not be so triggered. And in trying to process, it bothered me. I was like, why am I so bothered by these people? Why do they still hold so much energy and space in my brain? And in analyzing and dissecting this, I realized that being in a traumatic work environment is the equivalent of being in a traumatic relationship. And if you don't process and heal those wounds, you'll never be fully over them and you'll carry them with you to every other relationship and or job that you get in the future. So why does any of this matter? So the science says that workplace trauma can increase cortisol, your stress hormone. It weakens the immune system and is linked to depression and anxiety disorder. A Gallup, whatever, however you say it, that report found that 76% of employees experience burnout at least at some point in their job, and 28% say they feel burned out almost always or often. This is a widespread issue, and it's brought on by various factors such as unfair treatment, unmanageable workloads, a lack of role clarity and expectations, and insufficient manager support. I worked at one job that almost covered all of those things. I was hired to be fast tracked into a management position. They said they don't typically promote store managers from outside of the organization, that they usually promote from within. So he wanted to put me in the number one store to kind of fast track me into a management position. Store manager wanted her bestie to be promoted, and they saw my existence in that location as a threat. And the bestie, who was afraid I was going to take her job, convinced half the staff that I was terrible and told him that I wasn't catching on. Neither of them tried to train me in anything or showed me what I was actually supposed to be doing. They just made working every day toxic because not only did they not like me, they didn't train me. They told the boss who hired me that he made a mistake and that I wasn't catching on and I wasn't doing a good job. And then when he asked half the staff, of course, they don't like me and I'm not doing a good job because the other managers just complained about me the whole time. Like, I have a really good work ethic and I know I do a damn good job. And this wasn't my first time being in management, it was my first time being in this specific environment. And I expected there to be a little bit of cattiness working around a building full of females, and I hate to say that because I really don't want to think that way, and I convinced myself that it wasn't going to be that way because it's the 2020s. No, it wasn't the 20s back then. Either way, it was recent enough that I thought there'd be more girls, but no, it was still very catty, very cutthroat, very clicky, very he said, she said, and I just can't deal with that. Like, I'm too emotionally mature. I'm too, like, just psychologically mature to deal with the catty, clicky bullshit that I had to endure and that at that workplace. Like, I just want to show up. I want to do a good job. I want everybody around me to do a good job, and then I want to go home. I don't need all the extra. So, the fact that I wasn't getting any kind of managerial support, I wasn't having clear roles and expectations. Half of the staff hated me and was like talking shit about me behind my back. And I even heard them. I would see them roll their eyes at me. And as a manager, you have to have a little bit of thick skin. And I don't care if everybody likes me. I just care if they do a good job. But in the same token, like, I know that they didn't like me because they were fed a bunch of shit from somebody else. And it was aggravating. And then I didn't realize how traumatic that was until I got another job, and kind of like a relationship thing, you carry all that stuff with you. I immediately, like, was so closed off and guarded, and I didn't want to say anything to anybody outside of normal work. I wanted to make sure I had clear expectations. I didn't want anything to be said or done. And in the back of my brain, I just assumed everybody hated me. And at some point, I was just like, I don't want to think like that. I don't want to be like that. I don't want that to be the way I operate. I'm not going to let the actions and behaviors of a small, closed minded store with small, closed minded people in it to affect me forever. And I made a conscious decision that I was going to open up and I was going to make friends and I was just going to learn to trust again in a workplace environment. And it worked out really well. And I'm glad I did it because I worked with some amazing people at that next location. Now, the people I worked with were great, but the store itself that I worked at was traumatic. And I don't even know if I want to get into all that, but basically I was hired at that store to do a role and was promised this promotion in this area. Hey, we want to hire you for this position, but it's not open yet. So we're going to put you in this position, kind of, similar to the last one. And so I worked my ass off. I went above and beyond. I did all kinds of crazy things that, I was trying to prove myself to this company that ultimately could have gave a shit about me. In February, when they were supposed to announce my promotion to this position that was open and ready for me to take, they announced that they were actually eliminating that position along with 1,200 other positions, and, um, the chances of me getting promoted from outside of the position I was in was pretty slim to none at that point because of the amount of competition there was and the, scarcity of the jobs. So yeah, I felt very taken advantage of by that job who had recruited me from the other job, mind you. So yeah, there's a lot of different types of workplace trauma, and I highly encourage you to kind of do a deep dive into your work history and all of the different places and look for patterns and see how maybe it's affecting you in your current position. Because the problem with workplace trauma is it doesn't just stay at the job. It leaks into your relationships, your personal relationships, your romantic relationships, your parenting, your friendships, school, sleep, and sometimes even your self-worth. And to get into the little metaphysical side of it, unprocessed workplace trauma can store in your body. There's a book, nope, name's gone, but he writes about the body keeps score. It's a good book. If you haven't read it, read it. Read it again. If you have, I've read it twice now, and every time I read it, I learn something else because it's a hard read. There's been a couple times where I've read it and I had to like set it down for a little bit, a couple days, weeks, months, whatever, just to process um, trigger points and then come back to it after I felt emotionally capable. So it's a hard book to read, but it does talk about like the body holds trauma in it. And when you have trauma, even like workplace trauma, your body holds on to it and it can feel heavy. It can feel weighed down and daunting. And I remember recently I was looking for another job in the matrix and I couldn't figure out why it seemed like I was subconsciously sabotaging my potential to get a job in the workplace. And I realized that because of all of the trauma that I had, I needed a job, I needed money, I needed consistency. But then at the same time, I didn't want a job. I didn't want other people to be responsible for my future, my well being, because I had been betrayed so many times by so many people that I was supposed to be able to trust in the past. I would say the last 4 or 5 jobs that I've had, my careers that ended was due to some sort of betrayal. And so to put myself out there and to apply for positions, I subconsciously didn't actually want to go back to work. I didn't want to go to a workplace where there's a chance that somebody else's bestie is going to try to take my job or talk shit about me or fire me so they can hire some unqualified person to replace me at half my salary and just lots of little things. And yeah, so I was subconsciously rejecting a job because no matter how much I convinced myself I needed and wanted a job, deep down I didn't. I didn't want to go through that again. It's like someone who's gone through one bad relationship after another, and they just swear off men or women altogether. I'm never dating anybody again. I'm not going to go through this shit. Um, that's not realistic. Realistically, you need to learn and heal first, heal through the relationship. What was your part in it? Where were the red flags that you could have turned away? Um, Take ownership for your part in its demise and heal from it and then learn. What was this supposed to teach you? I try to turn any kind of negative, like I stub my toe on the coffee table and I'm like, what was that trying to teach me? What was I thinking or doing right beforehand that it was, snapping me out of it? And I'm usually thinking something negative when I injure myself stupidly. And it's just kind of a fun thing, and it's not a fun thing, but it's a thing in my brain that I've acknowledged is like, okay, what was I supposed to learn from this negative experience of my toe throbbing right now? Like, oh, I was pretend fighting with somebody in my head that I didn't need to have those thoughts about. Okay. Redirecting. But yeah, it was that realization that I didn't want to go back to work. I didn't want somebody else to have autonomy over me, my time, my life, my days off, my hours in the day. If my child has to go to a doctor's appointment, if my partner is sick and can't go to work and needs me, like I wanted to be able to help them and also, you know, make money. And it was then where I was like, okay, well, what else am I supposed to do? And I started deep diving into purpose and learning your purpose. I have an episode on that that's kind of funny. It's kind of fun. So I'll link that in the show notes. But also, that's kind of what I do. It's what made me want to be a life coach and to do this podcast and to share this information with everybody. Is it's part of my purpose. Part of my purpose is helping other people figure out what their purpose is. So if you want to make some changes in your life, schedule a one-on-one call with me. You can go to my website and schedule a one-on-one call with me. I'll leave my calendar link in the show notes below. If that's a little too direct and you're not sure you're ready for that, sign up for my website on sign up for my email on my website and be invited to any kind of upcoming courses, classes, webinars. I do a lot of things outside of this podcast. So if you want to be invited and included in those things, I highly encourage you to go to my website and sign up. And it's just my own little like shameless plug mid episode. But yeah, that's what I started doing is I learned what else I could do. So I didn't want to be stuck in a traumatic position. I didn't want to go back into the workplace because I hadn't done a lot of the healing. And like I said, if you don't do the healing, it shows up in your next workplace, in your next job. And working for myself and having that autonomy, I don't have to worry about any kind of cutthroat behavior or betrayal. I'm not going to betray me. I know better. I trust me. But if you're not healed from your last partner's infidelity or abuse or your last job's betrayal, you're going to carry that into the next relationship you have. Your nervous system is going to be looking for signs of the abuse or infidelity or trauma, and you're going to carry that into the next position or person. So it's just a way for your body to keep you safe, your brain to keep you safe. It's trying to protect you from the same traumas. It holds on to those things, those memories, those moments, those skepticisms, those wounds in an attempt to keep you safe from it happening again in the future. But ultimately, what you could do is sabotage any kind of future relationship or position that you have because you're carrying that. Again, when I said I got the secondary job that recruited me from the very, very toxic position, I was afraid to open up and I almost didn't do well in that position because I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to seem like I didn't know what I was doing. Carrying those traumas into the next position almost cost me that position. So my cognitive decision to open up and to not hold on to all of those things is what helped my progression in that position. But when you think of it in a relationship form, if your last partner cheated on you and abused you, you get into a new relationship, you're immediately going to be looking for reasons to accuse them of cheating on you or being aggressions. You're going to take everything as a microaggression or maybe take things out of context just because you're so used to that being the ultimate meaning. And you could potentially sabotage that relationship because if it is with a healthy person, they're not going to tolerate accusations of things of such nature. And they're going to be like, if that's who you thought I was when we started dating, then I'm not sure I want to date you in the first place. So there's a lot of things that can happen when you don't heal and you carry those things with you. And I don't want to keep like beating a dead horse, but it's ultimately like the main lesson. If that was the one takeaway is to heal. You can quit listening to the episode now. Go to another. No, I'm kidding. Please don't leave me. Let's talk about how your actual body reacts to trauma, like your fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, and what it looks like in the workplace. So if you have workplace trauma, your fight response might be to snap at coworkers or get angry at leadership or talk shit about anyone to anyone, just be an overall negative cancer to the company morale or culture. And yeah, just having like a super negative experience and outlook on the company, its future, its employees, its leadership. Your flight response might be to avoid emails, procrastinate, leave early, or come in late, taking excessive breaks, unnecessarily long trips to the bathroom, or more frequent smoke breaks, things like that. If you These would be shutting down meetings or conversations, not responding to email, or requests. A fawn reaction would be to people please, typically overworking, trying to gain approval, not setting or upholding healthy boundaries. Like, I remember dreading Sunday nights. I wouldn't be able to sleep all night. Monday morning, I would wake up, I would be dog ass tired, and I would wake up with tightness in my chest and like an almost nauseous feeling. That's a trauma cycle. So I want you to pause for a moment, and do you resonate with any of these trauma responses? Do you fight, flight, freeze, or fawn? And don't look at it from a judgmental perspective. Just notice, just acknowledge, and just have an awareness. I want to take a moment to look at a couple different case studies. So in 2017, former engineer Susan Fowler wrote about systemic harassment and retaliation in the workplace. And it caused Uber to launch an intensive investigation that revealed a toxic culture that drove out talented employees and cost them millions of dollars in turnover. And I worked for a company that had a very similar story. My boss was a tyrant. She was she was awful. She would make people cry. We had Sunday morning meetings and they called them Sunday morning cry sessions. Now I've got a thicker I got a bigger backbone and a thicker skin, so she wasn't gonna get under my skin like that. I'm not gonna cry over numbers and sad accusations from somebody who's not living a life I'd like to live anyway. But she drove away a lot of really good people, and I got tired of losing staff. I got tired of constantly hiring and interviewing only for them to be chased away a week later. So I took over the hiring training process, and I basically worked as a liaison between her and my employees, our employees, because I wanted to keep my staff. But in turn, I eventually got super burnt out from being constantly berated and bullied by her that my performance failed. And the overall store performance failed because I got tired of doing all of the work and then her taking credit for it. So at some point, she tried to write me up for performance, and I refused to sign the write up. And instead, I wrote my understanding of what was going on in the store and told her to shove it up her ass. And I quit. And she got fired 3 months later because they realized that I wasn't the problem. She was telling everybody I was the problem because she didn't want to take any kind of ownership or accountability for her own self and her own actions. And it was just a really sad existence because I really liked the job. I liked the people. And if it wasn't for her, I'd probably still be there. Well, I'd probably be doing other things in the company, but the company itself was a good company. It was just, she was terrible. But anyway, another case study that shows the opposite of what happens when you have a good culture was Patagonia. They actually invest in their employee well-being. They have on-site daycare, flexible hours, and a mission-driven culture. And as a result, they have one of the lowest turnover in the industry. The CDC has linked toxic work environments to a higher risk of heart disease and mental illness. Not surprised at all. And since I'm spilling the tea about all my other workplace trauma, I might as well talk about my last position in the Matrix as a district manager for a local gaming cafe. I loved that job. I loved most of my managers, most of my employees. I loved what I did. The owners of the company were the ones that hired me, and they were amazing people. And I learned a lot from them, and I would love to interact with them more and mentor from them. I mean, obviously, maybe not now, but at the time, I wanted to spend more time with them and pick their brains and talk to them. And in an attempt for them to step down, they had put some other people above me, which wasn't a problem. The problem was one of the people they put above me was besties with one of my managers below me, and decided to let me go because things weren't working out when 8 out of 9 of my stores were about to make bonus. The ninth store that didn't make bonus was having a lot of structural issues and was basically under construction. I fully promise if they weren't under construction, I would have had that store in bonus anyway. But yeah, so they let me go so they could steal my bonus and promote their bestie into my position, who went from a hairdresser, an underqualified hairdresser, to a district manager, because they wanted to pay her half of my salary. So it was a win-win situation for them. But when we talk about betrayal and workplace, like, that's the equivalent of having having a marriage. I love that job. I wanted to be in that job forever. I could see me growing with that company. That was my ultimate goal. It was a baby company. We were growing it. I wanted to grow with it and stay with it. And it's kind of the idea of you're in a loving, committed, healthy relationship. And then you think you have your whole life planned out. And then all of a sudden your spouse comes to you and says they've met somebody else and they're getting divorced. Your whole life crumbles and crashes. And that's ultimately how I felt when they let me go because things weren't working out when I was doing an amazing job because they wanted to steal my money and save money on payroll, basically. Like it was devastating. And I didn't go back to work. I didn't go back to the matrix. I went into the insurance industry because I was like, I can be my own boss and make my own money. And then I realized that the overall culture of that was just toxic. And in order to make money, you basically had to take advantage of people and rip them off. And I'm not saying that everybody in the insurance industry does that. I have really good friends that still work in the industry and they don't do that. But it wasn't something I wanted to be a part of. So again, that was 5 years ago. Well, that was probably 3 or 4 years ago that I had that job. And I've been happy as a travel agent and as a life coach. And I've been happy with what I do currently, as opposed to surviving and living in toxic environments. And it took me a long time to heal and move on. I tried really hard to forgive those people. And I'd like to say I'm pretty good at forgiveness. I'm pretty proud of my ability to forgive and let go. And it was hard and took a long time. And I'm still not fully content with my level of forgiveness for these people and just the deep rooted betrayal I felt like. But I hated the idea that I gave them so much power over me and let them consume so much space in my brain. That part bothered me more than anything. And that's why I wanted to heal and get over it because I wanted to go back into the workplace and I wanted to be able to show up from a place of excitement and curiosity and ownership and not traumatic survival or victimhood or any of those things. And there are a few main ways that you can heal and move forward from traumatic incidences in the workplace. And the first one is to have an awareness. Watching this episode, sitting down thinking about how some of the things I've said have resonated with you in your current or previous experiences. Just having that awareness is key. And naming your workplace trauma is the first act of empowerment. Being aware of it and admitting that you're hurt by it or whatever other emotions that you're feeling. Step two is regulation, tools, breath work, somatic movements, yoga, meditation. I know I use those in like every episode, but do it. It's so helpful. Like, it doesn't sound like it would do anything. Like I didn't think that meditating was going to do anything until I did it for a regular time and was like, oh, this is a gradual shift, but it's a shift. It's like using a lash serum. You don't see it right away, but 12 weeks later, people are asking if you have extensions, and you're like, no, these are just natural lashes. I'm just saying, like, things like that will take time. It's not an overnight magic button, but ultimately, gradually, it does help. You can also use journal prompts like, what's a pattern that I see repeating in the workplace? Am I okay with how I handle these situations? What trauma am I holding on from past positions? Step three is setting healthy boundaries. I've done a whole episode on boundaries. If you haven't watched it, I highly suggest you look into it. I'll link it in the show notes too. But saying no, requesting fair treatment. I'm a big proponent of acting your wage. Don't go above and beyond your standard level of job expectations. I did that so long for so many companies that could have gave two shits about me. And I hate when I see other people doing it. Don't stay longer if you don't have to. And go to HR when appropriate and document every toxic behavior. HR loves a good paper trail with dates and times and accurate descriptions of things that took place. Bonus points if it's on camera. Speaking of HR, the last thing you can do is support. Going to HR, getting therapy, going to counseling if it's available, talking to a trusted supervisor or manager, going above somebody else's head if you need to, or even seeking legal advice. Funny thought, some jobs even have a counseling option that you can have within the workforce. They'll even pay for it. And something else you can do is reframing. You are not your job. You are not your job description. You're not your boss's opinion. You're not your numbers. You're not your performance level. You're not your rank. You're not your tenure. You're not your worst day at work. You can have good work ethic while still maintaining healthy boundaries and not getting taken advantage of. In America, so many times we're asked, "What's your name? What do you do?" It's like, our job description is tied to who we are. And because of that thought process, so many people tie their job description and their performance to their self worth. My name is Layla, and I'm a life coach and a travel agent and a professional mermaid and a podcast host. I don't want to say that to everybody every time they ask me what my name is and who and what do I do. My jobs don't define me, except for maybe being a mermaid. I am a mermaid. But I'm just saying, let's change the way we say those things. First of all, stop asking people what they do. I could care less. I couldn't care less what you do for a living. That's not what I want to know. My jobs don't define me. Instead of I'm a, let's start saying my job title is, or I work as a. That slight shift in verbiage reframes how we see that. I have a position as a regional director as opposed to I am a regional director. And you see the just the slight tweak disassociates it from yourself. It's something you do, not something you are. I couldn't care less what you do for a living. That's not what I want to know. I'm not going to be impressed. I'm not going to judge you for it. You can tell me you flip burgers at McDonald's, and I'll be like, cool, you have a job in this economy. I think they're paying well. So who am I to judge what you do? I don't know what they make. I don't know what you do. Maybe you love that and you're happy. I'm happy for you. It's not my place to judge. I don't care what you do. I want to know the deep things. I want to know what kind of childhood you had. I want to know what you think happens when we die. I want to know like deep psychological things about you, not what you do. So, yeah, grab a pen and paper and write down 3 ways that your current job or past workplace or both has impacted your health, emotions, or relationships. And now draw a line across the page and then write down 3 boundaries or practices that you could have or should put in place to protect yourself. And this could be something as small as taking your full lunch break or allotted time off without guilt, or something major like finding a new job entirely. Now, I will say this is the one part that differs from being in a relationship. I will not tell you to find a new relationship before you get out of one. I've done that. It doesn't end well. It's pretty messy. But in a job, yes, I think a lot of people underestimate how long it can take to find a new job. I was always told to save 6 months' salaries in case something happened. And so when I decided to tell the one boss to shove it up her ass, I thought I would have a new job within 6 months. And 9 months later, when I found a job and was struggling, all my credit cards were maxed out, I definitely took a pay cut and desperately just took whatever position I could find that would hire me. So make sure you have a plan in place, you have an escape plan, and it's realistic before you exit your current position, if that is the route that you decide to take. I mean, like a lot of relationships, sometimes you just need to break up. Sometimes things have irreconcilable differences. And if that's the situation in your job, then it's time to start making your escape plan. So, to wrap this up, I want to say that workplace trauma is more common than we want to admit, but healing is possible. You're not broken, you're human. And humans are incredibly resilient when given the right tools and support. And I hope I have brought that to you in this episode, or at least given you the resources to move forward from here, if this is something that resonates with you. And again, I invite you to go deeper, book a call with me. I can help you unpack what you've been carrying and help you create an escape plan or find your purpose and reclaim your confidence if you've tied your self worth to your position and your title and your performance. Remember, life is too precious to spend in environments that diminish you. You deserve safety, respect, and purpose. Like, share, subscribe, leave a review, do all the things that help me keep bringing this information to you for free. Let's go do life healed. I love you guys. Bye.